Get ready, FlatsClass fans, to learn all about speckled trout and their special relationship with the ball brown lure. All right. Let's catch you up. I brought in, I put my glasses on so I can see what the heck I'm doing. I brought in my BUZBE box that has most of my Paul Browns that I was fishing this week. And I think I almost am obligated to tell you a little bit of history about the brand. Now Paul Brown lures are not something new. Now they may be new to some of us that fish here in Florida because we fish clear water and many of us fish soft baits instead of hard baits or hybrid baits like the Paul Brown. But the brand's been around since 1974 when Paul Brown started it at his home. And it had such a cult-like following, and here we are 50 years later and still does, that he really had probably the most legendary lure that's ever been made for speckled trout. But I'm going to tell you that there's more to this bait than just catching speckled trout, but we're going to get to that a little bit later. His original idea was he needed to make a bait that looked a lot like the TT series or the 52 or 51M Mirrolure, that shape. So he came out with, well, the original Paul Brown that has that same type of body, that same finger mullet torpedo looking shape. But his twist on it was the fact that it was a through wire soft bait, which for those of you that don't know, even though trout pop at a lure, they're a gripping type fish. They don't inhale the bait like a snook does. Those two fangs that they have are for gripping prey. So when they bite a Paul Brown, it's like biting a soft bait, and it feels real for a second, and they hold on to it just a little longer so that you can catch them. But this bait was also coined the corky. And the reason for, inside this bait, they have cork inserts. Now they're foam, but that's the secret to giving it that slow fall down and that slow descent when it stops after subwalking is what drives trout nuts. It really does. I mean, they are so vulnerable to twitch, 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 and then that little fall. When that bait stops, after they've been following it, they snap it right then. That's what gets them every time. Now, a lot of the guys that are fans of this bait will tell you they make the great colors, the big giant eye, which is a super target for these types of fish, because let's face it, speckled trout are like probably the most prolific ambush predators on a flat in a given area. Their slow sink, their subwalkability, and that's the nice thing. When we start getting to the cooler months, we all believe that the bait itself has to move slow. You start falling below, 62 degrees here in Florida, you're getting into the 50s. That slow subwalk type look, tempo is very appealing to a lot of fish, but especially to speckled trout. Now, he has several profiles, or I said Mirrolure has the profiles now because they probably have like about 10 or 12 profiles. But the two that are the most notorious are probably the original and the Fat Boy. Now, Mirrolure has put a twist on some of that with the Pro Series, and then they came out, let me open my box here. They came out with the Mirrodine XLs, which I'm a huge fan of. I really like that bait. It's a good bait. And then they've got the Little Devil, which that's kind of a Texas style. But there's a soft dog. I only carry the profiles that I use the most. But the way they weight these and the way they perform in the water is unique. And most of us are intimidated by baits like this, thinking that there's a certain way you have to manipulate them or work them. Of course, there are ways to make them more effective, but I have never found a wrong way to work this bait. Honestly, I've never found a way that I didn't catch fish on it. It just naturally catches fish. So for me, there are some modifications that you can make to the lure that will make it perform a little bit different. Probably the most notable is the differences between the Pro Series Fat Boy, which I'll pull one out because I know I got a couple of them here. The Pro Series Fat Boy and the original Fat Boy, okay? Now, on the Pro Series, it's weighted different. And I learned this because I just finished a television show with Bob Puccinelli. This is the old through wire, if you will, the through wire system on the originals. You got the foam insert with the look, the rattle, and the way it's weighted. It wants to make the bait fall kind of tail first, okay? Like a dying bait. The Pro Series, they put a different insert in. Now this insert and the new hook setup allows for this bait not to fall tail first, but to waffle down like a mirrodine, like a wedge through the water. So it's totally different. The reason for that is a lot of the Florida anglers wanted the lure to perform much like a big mirrodine. The Texas group, on the other hand, which I consider the experts truly on this bait, even though we've got several super qualified guys over here that throw this. Bob Puccinelli is one of many. We've got Ed Tabler in Jacksonville. We've got Captain Matt Chipperfield, which I shot a television show, and I still have the bait that we used out of that show. I'll show it to you right here, and then I'll explain that bait right there. That's the old Plum Crazy, and I know you're saying, damn, CA, that thing looks messed up, but I'm about to explain. And then there's Dr. Jay Wright here in Florida, who holds several of the fly tackle IGFA records for speckled trout, but he's a plugger too. Now let me explain the differences between the Pro Series and the original and why there's some manipulation that can be had here. So I showed you the obvious differences in the way that their inner, through wire setup is different. These two setups. Okay, we talked about that. Because the old school one, like such, the original, which I still use most of the time, when you got these baits, they look a little bit, this version versus this version. Many of you that are avid or old school Paul Brown fans know that when you pull it out of the package, you're going to take the nose of the bait and you're going to bend it down because you want the bait to dig. You want it to dig. And then you're going to take the tail and you're going to bend it down. And what that does is it slows its forward progress because there's resistance in that bend, okay? So you twitch it, and even though you're twitching it hard, there's like a break there, which keeps it walking sideways better. Then when it falls, because there's more surface area here, it hangs or suspends even better than it normally would. So that's a trick that a lot of Paul Brown enthusiasts use when they pull these baits out of the box. The first thing they want to do is bend that nose down, and then they want to bend that tail a little bit, and get that bait looking different and behaving different, even though it's important to keep the bait or the spine of the bait in line. That's kind of a thing in Texas. In Florida, many of the guys don't bend the bait at all. Now, I do because I like to work the bait from December through March mostly. And I like to have that real slow tempo back and forth and keep it in the strike zone with that subwalk for the longest period of time. I find it works the best. But after doing a fishing school with a good friend of mine, a young captain here, Captain Socrates, we have these big fluctuations in water temperatures here in Florida where it will be really cold and chill, and then we'll have a good warm up. And his snook, which he's known as a snook god on this coast, especially in the nature coast zone, he likes to work the baits fast. So he prefers the Pro Series that doesn't do that, and then he can work this thing almost nose up. Now, if you wanted to get real technical, you could probably bend that tail up and it would move even faster with the nose up. And he works it at a really fast pace, and he catches some of the biggest early snook of the year on the Paul Brown. And many of us catch redfish on the Mirrolure profile that has been added to the Paul Brown lineup because it comes in two different sizes. It comes in the XL version like this, which I fish a lot for trout. When you watch that show, you're going to see it. And I fish that XL version for snook because I feel like snook are fooled by it a lot easier than even the hard bait. It doesn't have nearly the hard flash that a hard bait like a Mirrolure has. Where you've watched me do those videos where I'll take sandpaper and kind of rub the edge of a hard bait off, like one of my hard baits here. I'll take the shine off it. If I can get a hold of one here, I'll try to take the shine off the plug, make it a little duller, especially on those bright days. But these Paul Browns, it is already kind of a dull look. So these can be really good solid baits. And in the Pro Series, they've upgraded these hooks so that guys can catch redfish. They can catch snook. Because the toughest thing on the original size for years was those little fine wire hooks are pretty cool and very sticky and perfect for trout because they don't put a big hole in their mouth. But then if you caught a redfish or a snook, it would get off. It would just straighten the hooks out. So the Pro Series has upgraded hooks on them, but they sink a little bit faster, if you will, in cases where the tail's not bent down. Now, let me explain a unique profile they have called the Little Devil. The thing that is unique about the Little Devil, and I've got a couple here in the package. In Texas, there's a few knockoffs like the Slick and things like that, but these are the Paul Brown Little Devils. They're more tadpole-like, so they got that whippy tail. They're more head-weighted. I use them in current. I use them to catch snook. I use them when I want that fast dart on the warm-ups. Once we start getting into April and May, I catch snook on these. I catch trout that are in current or in deeper water with them because I can move them faster and I can cast them like a bullet into the wind because of their shape. So they're a situational bait for me, but like that dark purple one there with the blue flake in it, that is such a good bait for me. Low light, nighttime, that darting back and forth, and then it just kind of glides down. It just looks like a dying bait. That one has been very, very effective for me when targeting a little bit deeper trout. Really effective for me when I'm fishing for snook, like I say, especially when they're schooled up or early morning, or even in any situation where I got to work a bait quickly. I reach for that Little Devil in the Paul Brown lineup, and it seems like it does a good job. Now, for me, moreover, this bait will always be the go-to, standard bait for catching big trout. And I definitely pull it out of my box once I start feeling the first couple of cold fronts and that water temperature gets down to the low 60s. I'm thinking it's Paul Brown time. We're going to catch some fish. And I enjoy that style of fishing because many of you that know me over the years or over the decades now know that my favorite fish to catch are those big trout. I love big trout fishing. And some of the guys that are in the upper Gulf Coast and moving into Texas, guys like Jay Watkins Sr., Chris Bush, they will all tell you that the Paul Brown is the quintessential best trout lure ever, all time. And it would be hard for me to argue that. Now, do I use Mirrolures to catch trout? Of course I do. I use the Catch 2000. I use the Top Dog series. I use the Sheep Hup series quite a bit for them. I use the big Mirrodines for them. They work great, especially the new Skin series, because I live in a place where the water is gin clear. Don't get too caught up in these loud colors, that happen. If you remember, I did a YouTube video not too long ago where I prioritize tempo and profile size are the most important. Colors last. Color is not as important as you think it is. Now, the Texas guys, they lock into certain colors in certain situations, but I'm telling you that most of those colors out there are loud colors. They want the fish to be able to see them in that turbid water. If you're afraid to use some of those loud colors here, then pick the more natural colors that we would have in our waters. But I don't think you can go wrong with pearl chartreuse or something that looks just like a pilchard. You can't go wrong with that stuff. But I was over in St. Augustine in a foot of water and we were using that. And the reason why the hook is broke on the forward, when this is a color called Plum Crazy, but it looks a lot like my dark and stormy color at Z-Man, it's because we were catching redfish on this bait as well, and they were tearing it up. Now, one more secret, and then I'll let you go. And that secret is you can't throw these lures on your lightest weight rod. I like to throw them on a medium, I'm going to say fast to extra fast, depends on the brand. Naturally, I'm a Shimano guy, so if you're throwing a Terramar Double X and you've got a medium fast taper, you're probably going to be fine. But with some brands, it's going to have to be a medium extra fast. I hate getting all the way to medium heavies only for the reason of once you've got the trout hooked up, if you've got too stiff a rod that you were depending on to cast these heavier baits, because some of them weigh an ounce, then you risk the chance of losing the fish when it gets close to you because you don't have enough give, enough parabolics in the rod itself. That's why medium rods that are have a little more spine, they're a little quicker tip, probably a lot better. I throw these baits primarily on braid with a 3-4 foot leader, but I have several that are on just straight fluorocarbon, 15-pound fluorocarbon line, and I'll put a little piece of tippet on it because I live where there are snook and plenty of redfish. But that would be the ultimate tip. I use 7-foot rods mostly to swing for these baits, and I just like that little bit of, I like to keep my rod angle kind of low, twitch, and then kill it a little bit. And I'm always kind of reeling, taking that slack out because I don't want it to fall tail first with the original, though. The pros will fall straight. So if you experiment a little bit, do it in a swimming pool, check it out at the dock a little bit, you'll get the hang of this bait. The whole idea is to make the bait sub-walk, like you're walking a topwater under the water. That's really it. There is no wrong way to work this bait. You can experiment and you'll have a lot of success. If these type of videos are helping you and I turn you into a Paul Brown fan, after all, let us know down in the comments. Let us also know what more you would like to see here at FlatsClass YouTube. It's my job to make you a better angler, and the only way I can do that is if you subscribe and you're following along in the classroom here each and every week, because we're putting about 3 or 4 of these videos out there every week. All right, talking about that, this is my day to do video, so I'm going to go in the shop and go find something else to talk about. Until next time, guys, get out there and catch those speckled trout. This is it, February and March, some of the best months to get your PBs. All right. Till next time.